Ruslan, share with us, what's the public sentiment, after 4 years inside Ukraine? Are they with the government? Are they determined to continue? As we said, there's no end of the war inside yet.
It looks like Ukrainian elites, Ukrainian society, and not only Ukraine, but also in Europe and United States, got used to it. Got used to it to this situation, and they made some kind of behavior to how to survive in this war and how to even earn the benefits in this war. And Ukrainian public opinion sentiments in the elites also are different. Of course, we have so-called deal-making party, part of our elites which are ready to maybe sign some agreement, even with concessions, and to find the end of this war. And also we have a bigger party in elites, which I can call status quo party, which insists in continuation of the war because war gives a lot of power, unlimited power. War earns a lot of money. Talking about society, Ukrainian society is still very scary. And this scary is a management tool for elites toward Ukrainian society. From one point of view, a strong majority of Ukrainian society, it's from 70 till 80% of Ukrainian people are standing for the ending of the war. They are willing to end this war, this very bloody, very suffering war. But from another point of view, majority, near 50 till 60% of Ukrainians are not ready to go to some concessions, which are very necessary to end this war, because we need to find some kind of compromise between the sides in this war, in this situation when no one is defeated. I agree with my colleague that Ukraine is not winning this war. But Ukraine, we cannot say that Ukraine could be defeated in the nearest future. And so, because war is going on, no one can predict what will be the end of this war, because a lot of black swans over our heads all the time, and Prigozhin Cup, for example, in Russia in 2023, also was a very significant sign that Russian political system is not very stable also.
Mm-hmm. Ruslan, let's continue. As we mentioned about European support and the previously U.S. support, previously under the Biden administration, U.S. was the primary military and financial backer of Ukraine, providing tens of billions of dollars in security assistance and also arms. But this has changed, and Donald Trump, pushing for Europe to shoulder more of the burden and Ukraine to accept territorial concessions or losses. How does Ukraine see the role of the U.S., which is now basically bring the two sides together to negotiate a settlement for the war?
In Ukraine and Europe in general, elites are considering this situation as a temporary situation. It looks like they are still waiting for some changes in American policy or in internal American political balances after midterm elections. Mm-hmm. This year in November it will happen in the United States, or after the next presidential elections. Ukraine and Europe, in such terms, they are in strategic waiting for the changes from United States. But at the same time, they are not trying to don't provoke Trump for some sharp doings against Ukraine and Europe. They're trying to keep the dialogue with Trump. They are saying thank you, Trump, Mr. Trump, very often, almost every day for 10 times. Of course, it's kind of joke. It's an attempt to keep the balance with United States and waiting the changes. Of course, Europe now is covering all Ukrainian needs, and Europe increased the supplies for Ukraine military and financial supplies for Ukraine in 2 times last year because of absence American military and financial support. But Europe is still very incoherent, and European policy could not be stable for a long time. And Ukraine accepts these risks, and Ukraine is trying to maneuver between Europe and United States in these terms. But even taking account the absence of American military and financial support, we need to understand that the American presence in Ukraine is still very crucial for Ukrainian defense because United States military intelligence support, United States trade and sale the weapon to Ukraine through the European mechanism is extremely important, the most important, crucial for Ukrainian defense now. Talking about the United States demands on the territorial concessions, it looked like Ukrainian government is trying some kind to softening these demands, and Ukraine is not declining these demands, but Ukraine is not approving these demands also. Zelensky and his team are not going to support to accept any territorial formal concessions, and Ukraine is still insisting on a ceasefire or through the battle line, as it was in previous preliminary Chinese suggestions in 2023. This is unfortunately Ukraine declined that Chinese suggestions in 2023, but nowadays it is official Ukrainian position.
Yeah. Do you think it is wise, for the Europeans or the Ukrainian government to wait for internal changes inside the US, for example, with the midterm election?
I think it's not very wise policy, and I think we need to find a solution, compromise, and new balance to reach the peace. But it's a very safe way for Ukrainian and European political elites. Ukraine is still able to resist, so there is no significant risk to be defeated in the war nearest years. And it led the sides, the Ukraine and Europe, to wait some changes. Because to be honest, frankly speaking, nowadays political risks for political elites in Ukraine and Europe of ending of the war is much bigger. Than to keep in the war, to continue this war. So this is the main reason: money reason, power reason, and risks of the ending of the war and changes of the regimes after the war. This is the main technical barriers to find the peace. In general terms, less phrased only, I need to end to this war. We need the more sovereign Europe, because the key of this conflict in the Europe, I'm not fully agreed with my previous colleagues that it is confrontation only between the United States and Russia. No, the main interest of Russia is Europe. In market terms, in defense, in security terms, the relations between Europe and Russia are in the core of this conflict. Mm-hmm. If Europe will be more sovereign and more willing to the peace negotiation, more able to put on the table their leverages and their concessions towards Russia and Ukraine at the same time, I think the peace could be much closer than it is now.
A good point you mentioned about European Union to be more sovereign, and also you pointed out the fact that they are not at the table for negotiation arranged by Washington. Ukraine, Russia, US. You would expect the presence of European Union delegations, but obviously they are not there. Do you think they are demanding for their presence? Or, some European leaders said, the US representing us, and the US talked to us about their approach, after or before the dialogue. Is that the case?
We've seen European delegation in the side events of the last Geneva meeting. It was Europeans were there, but they were not a part of official dialogue. And I think it's because that Europe still is very divided. We have a minority of European countries which are insisting on negotiation and peace, and we have majority of European countries, mostly from Western Europe and Northern Europe, which are insisting on the strategy of defeating Russia, of exhaustion of the Russia. And so, because Europe divided, Europe is not able to put on the table its own concessions, which are very necessary to find the new compromise and balance. And till the time that Europe will not be ready to find some to go to some compromises, this war could not be ended because Europe has significant influence, the majority influence on Ukraine and Russia, both sides. In Ukraine, in terms of military and financial supplies, and enter into European Union at the same time, and security guarantees for Ukraine. For Russia, also, it's a question of security guarantees for energy market, for Russian energy products, and also Russian frozen assets, and many different other issues, including sanctions and so on.
Mhm.
We need to rebuild the European strategy towards the conflict. We need to new approach to the deterrence. It's not only increasing military capabilities, but also negotiations and readiness to concessions. We will be much closer to the end of this war. I don't know, but I think we need to restore the balances, security balances in Europe, and the main role of this is of United States, Europe, European Union, and Russia, of course, in this process. And this is the key to end this conflict. We need to restore the balance. We don't need to intend to rebuild the past.
Yeah, the balance of power in the European continent. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app or on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.